Like a lot of Jewish people felt that October 7th was not respected, or that the suffering that occurred was not understood to be legitimate suffering, or that it was somehow excusable and being excused actively.
I think Palestinians are definitely feel more silence. Dr. Schnoor touched on that, and I think that is true. It's going to be frowned upon. It's going to be looked at as inflammatory because of the fact that I think the Palestinian cause has been phrased as an anti-Semitic cause, which I think is completely false, in my opinion.
So welcome everybody. I would like to introduce Professor Schnoor. I met Dr. Schnoor a couple of weeks ago in an event which we'll probably discuss in another time. And I realized, or it came to my knowledge, that he has a dialogue, a group running at York University. And as most people know, York has been the epicenter in Ontario of all the turmoil between Arab and Jewish students. Wanted to have an opportunity to talk to Dr. Schnoor about his experience in trying to build that dialogue, finding the participants, the effect of the dialogue on the students and on the university as a whole. And I am truly honored to have with me today Nazir and Lizzie, who are two of the participants in the dialogue. And let's start by introductions. So we'll start by Dr. Schnoor first.
Yeah, hi, Professor Randall Schnoor. And first of all, Ahmed, I want to congratulate you on this new initiative with this excellent podcast you're starting called The Space. And we are honored from Bridging the Gap at York University, which is the name of our group. We're honored to be among your first guests. And I look forward to sharing with you what we're doing.
Excellent. And what do you teach at York?
Well, I'm a sociologist and I teach a lot of Jewish studies. And in the last few years, I've also integrated some Islamic studies into my courses, which has really been an important and valuable new horizon for me, where I've been meeting a lot of Muslim students and creating respectful conversations in my classroom, which are so important. And that really inspired me to continue that kind of work, to do this dialogue work that we're doing.
Oh, that's very interesting. Very interesting. And then I'm going to go to Lizzie. Lizzie, can you please introduce yourself as well? I would like to know more about you.
Hi, I'm Lizzie. I am a mature student of sociology at York University, and I'm an executive member of Bridging the Gap.
Are you currently still a student or are you now an alumni?
I'm currently a student, yes.
Okay, excellent.
Hi, I'm Nazir. I'm a student as well. I'm a biomed major, so I'm veering away from sociology.
Biomed.
Yeah, I'm a fourth year, kind of. I'm just finishing up, and yeah, I'm really excited to be here. I think there's nothing more important to be spoken about than this, to be honest. So it's definitely it's important. So I'm really thrilled to speak, to be honest.
Okay, excellent. So we got religious studies that seems to be almost historic in nature, and then sociology and biomed. So it's quite a good variety of backgrounds. So I'm assuming you were not a student of Dr. Schnoor, and you probably did not meet through academically.
No, so I do take humanities out of interest, some humanities courses, and I took a religion course. It's about mysticism. Incredible course, loved it, and my professor there told me, well, my colleague has this event where he's facilitating dialogue between Jewish and Palestinian students, and of course, like I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I was pretty hesitant. Like it's because they're tough conversations to have, and also the Palestinian cause is something I hold dear. So feeling like I'm compromising it was a fear that I had. But then, of course, I couldn't help it. I had to see what this is about, and I had to give it a chance, and I did. And this is how I met Dr. Schnoor, and I'm really glad that I did. It ended up being
Amazing,
fruitful. Yeah.
amazing. So, uh, I read on the news like everybody else did. I read about um, the controversies at York specifically with um, with the student union statement, the faculty reaction, the back and forth, and we also know the history of York. There was I believe an incident 6 or 7 years ago with a lecture that led into some physical violence between two groups of students, and the university had to interfere and suspend activities in certain groups. um, York seems to be a university where a lot of tension happens. I personally think, I talked to Dr. Schnoor before, I understand why tensions happen between young people. That's just the nature of being young. Um, but I would like maybe Dr. Schnoor to shed some light for those who only read like me from the newspaper. What was it like inside York um, after October the 7th, as events started to happen, as the scale of the human suffering starts to evolve? What was going on there?
Well, October 7th was, wasn't the start of this conflict, but we know that it's another tragic chapter, and it was tragic for Jews and Israelis on October 7th, and 1,200 people were killed, and it's been equally tragic to see the subsequent um, retaliation by the Israeli military and the amount of Gazans who are being killed and the humanitarian disaster that's happening now. So it's a very difficult time for many people around the world, in society, and universities are no different. As you say, universities are places where young adults are passionate about political issues, and we know that this issue is central to many people. Um, I don't know if I would totally agree that York is the absolute epicenter of all of this. We have all kinds of incidents happening now on campuses across Ontario and Canada, United States, and in the UK and Australia. I've spoken to many people and read many articles, and it's all over the place. You might say York has been quieter than some other campuses since October, in that we haven't had any physical altercations, or very minimal. Although, as you mentioned, in November 2019, we did have a more physical altercation. And I think we've learned from that to be able to organize more peaceful protests that are provocative and disturbing to some, but nonetheless are allowed and haven't had too much in the way of physical incidents. Um, so that's something at our university that we're working very hard on, and I think we're doing pretty well. Um, there are a lot of there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of hurt, and there have been many protests at York, particularly pro-Palestinian protests. A number of flashpoints that you mentioned, such as the union statement and a number of other flashpoints. It's a very charged issue, and we see a lot of polarization. And when something happens, people tend to resort to their strong polarized position and see the incident through the lens of that position. And there's a lot of chanting, a lot of yelling, and not a lot of listening. Not a lot of, hey, let's actually share with each other how we're feeling, rather than yelling in the hallways of the university. So that's where this kind of idea stems from, is that we are offering an alternative conversation to dealing with very difficult issues.
Can you please maybe elaborate a little bit on the type of frustration or fear or anger, whatever the pressure is, the type the Jewish students in the university face, and the Palestinian or Arab or pro-Palestinian students feel in the university in the current atmosphere?
There's a lot of misunderstanding and hate to go around on many sides. And each side tends to feel that they're the victim. And they're right. We're all being victims here at the university. From a Jewish point of view, there's a lot of concern about anti Semitism at universities. Um, and there have been a number of incidents. At Queen's University, we had mezuzahs ripped down off of dormitory doors. Mezuzahs are an amulet that Jews place on their doorpost with a scroll of a holy verse in it. There's swastikas that found at York on desks or on walls. Um, Jewish students some of them feel quite uncomfortable on campus, and the Jewish community certainly feels uncomfortable. And there's a lot of effort to try to advocate to get the university to act more strongly. On the other hand, you have Palestinian students and faculty, or those who are sympathetic to the Palestinian cause, who feel that their voices are not allowed to be heard, who feel that the decree of anti Semitism silences their voices and is used in too strong of a way, so that very, very much of pro Palestinian advocacy is often identified as anti Semitism, which tends to make them feel silenced. And some pro Palestinian professors feel very wary about if something they say will be circulated around on websites or reported to certain groups that will put it on, we have something called jewhatred.org, I believe, or Canary Mission, where, so-called anti-Zionists or anti-Semites are put on websites to, to condemn what they're doing. So those are just some examples of a very charged and, uncomfortable climate for a lot of people on campuses today.
I'm sorry. This is really heavy. So I'll start with Lizzie again. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on the climate that you have sensed in York since the events of October 7th.
I think that there's been a lot of anger that tends to make people stop listening, and they want to be heard, but they're not hearing maybe how they're being perceived by people who are in their mindset, like on the other side of the divide, right? And I think that both of these groups, Jewish people, Palestinian people, are groups that have a lot of trauma in their history. And we're all interpreting the messages that we're hearing through that trauma. So this, in my opinion, leads to a lot of misunderstandings, a lot of ignorance, and that leads to, hatred and us versus them mentality. So I think that that's happening at York. I think there's like a if you're not with us, you're against us kind of attitude. And it makes people like from both groups feel unsafe, because if you're talking about the safety of your people, of something that matters so deeply to you and is a horrific thing, and you don't feel heard, like that's pretty painful, right? So I think that there's a lot of that going around anyways.
So you're saying that as a Jewish student, you the sense of I would say your level of perception of the anger after that will not be probably after October 7th. That will be after the response to October 7th, I'm guessing. But maybe the October 7th has been seen through the trauma of the historical trauma of, I believe, the Holocaust, and we are going to be killed because we are Jewish. And then after that, you get the Israeli response. And in reaction to the Israeli response, we get the pro-Palestinian protest. And then that protest is now also interpreted in the same lens, which is there is hatred, and that hatred is coming to me.
Yeah, and I think that um, like a lot of Jewish people felt that October 7th was not respected, or that the suffering that occurred was not understood to be legitimate suffering, or that it was somehow excusable and being excused actively. And obviously that would make you very angry, but then that anger makes it very hard to understand the pain and suffering of Palestinian people, right? Because like the us versus them mentality, we all want to be perceived as individuals, right? Jews want to be not held responsible for the actions that Israel takes that are maybe wrong. And Palestinian people don't want to be held responsible for the actions of Hamas. But when you other the other side, it's very hard for you to perceive their individuality. So I think that everybody's like through their pain and through their past trauma, um, creating this us versus them mentality that makes it very hard for you to understand the pain or to empathize with the pain that
Okay,
is.
no, that makes sense. That absolutely makes sense. So now I'm going to turn to Nazir, and I would like you to also maybe shed the light on the Palestinian view in this.
Um, First of all, I'm not Palestinian. I wish I would be honored to be Palestinian. Um, it would definitely be an honor. I'm not, so I can't see. This conversation makes me filled with dread and nervousness and anxiousness and sadness, and I'm not Palestinian, so I cannot imagine what people who are impacted by this, whether Jewish or Palestinian, could be feeling. But I try. Um, but that being said, I guess I'll speak about the climate at York first, um, and then go from there, because I do have an opinion about why it's. So you said it was the epicenter, and maybe it isn't, maybe it is, but there definitely is a lot of tension. And I think first of all, the York administration has a responsibility. They have a responsibility that they owe to their students, to themselves, to the academic world, and institutions in general, and the academic code and dogma, and which is to protect the academic integrity of, of, of their students and of the institution itself. Academic integrity is perpetuated by dialogue. You have to let it happen, and it feels like that is sort of being prevented. I do think that tensions arise because of the administration in a lot of cases, and by that I don't mean the faculty. I think it's very important to stress on that. I think, like, I spoke to a lot of faculty, and my biggest concern isn't the students being silenced. My biggest concern is the faculty being silenced, because you have, I look at it this way: you have the most nuanced of academics in your institution that are teaching all these various subjects that require critical thinking and questioning and skepticism and controversy. And this is how we learn, and this is how we advance any topic, and this is how we become more nuanced societies in general, right? And we have these academic leaders that are teaching us and that are there. And these guys need to have the academic freedom to delve into these topics without feeling pressured. They need to be able to be activists if they want to. They need to be able to speak freely. And I include in that Zionist professors as well, and who are more sympathetic with the Israeli side of things. I'm speaking about both sides. These dialogues need to happen because if they don't, then we're not going anywhere, and I don't want to study anymore, and I think there's no point. And so when for example the unions make a statement that is inflammatory, I don't want to comment on the content of the statement, but the statement has a very clear opinion and very clear decolonization, what's it called, sort of approach that is clearly sympathetic also with the indigenous cause. That the university didn't try to address; it tried to silence, and this led to the tension. In my opinion, I think no one feels like they can talk. I think Palestinians are definitely feel more silenced. Dr. Schnoor touched on that, and I think that is true. I think if we get together as Middle Easterns and Palestinians and decide to start a dialogue group for Palestinians where we speak about the very hard-hitting, what's it called, sort of topics that you can talk about that comes with the cause, I do think that it's not gonna be supported. It's gonna be frowned upon. It's gonna be looked at as inflammatory because of the fact that I think the Palestinian cause has been phrased as an anti-Semitic cause, which I think is completely false in my opinion. And that is a problem, and I do think that plays into the tension of all of this. If you get 100 police officers and you put them in a neighborhood and you make them patrol the streets up and down, and you put barriers to stop the protests from happening in central spots, and you oppress that type of freedom of speech, people are going to feel like they're in danger in the first place. If you wake up in the morning and I'm like, hey, good morning, just so you know, if your neighbor attacks you, I'm going to protect you. Just please know that this is going to happen. I'm there for you if your neighbor attacks you. All you're thinking about is the fact that your neighbor is going to attack you. This is, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, and I think this is happening. And yeah, that is pretty disappointing. And I do think, of course, tensions are going to arise because of this. And I think tensions should be left to arise. I think this university should be on standby in case anything happens. And something will happen, probably. But these inflammatory instances need to be let to happen because that's how dialogue is created. And that's how people end up talking. Honestly, in our group, we've spoken about very controversial topics. We've gotten very deep into the cause. I'm very pro-Palestinian, and we've gotten really deep into it, and I understood and I attempted to understand the Israeli perspective, and they attempted to understand me, and it was more than fruitful. It was beautiful, and people fought, and voices were raised sometimes, and voices were lowered after, and honestly, it was the first time where I saw there's actual academic integrity at York, and I think this is why we're doing this. So I think they should let us speak. This is what I'm essentially saying. But yeah.
Okay, that's a very interesting point. So, Dr. Schnoor, what do you? I think I would like to hear from you as well. Do you think that in academic integrity is probably the thing that we saved here, or was it in your mind you were just trying to help the students and their psychological safety?
Well, I always want to help students. It's my nature. Nazir said some very interesting things, many of which I agree with, and just the way he described our group is so inspiring because we're really a young group. We've only started since after October 7th, and to hear how Nazir's found it so valuable is very, very satisfying. And that's what it's about. I agree with Nazir about the need for freedom of speech in protests, which not everyone understands, I don't think. That inflammatory slogans are, not against the law, such as "From the River to the Sea, Palestine will be free," or "Viva Viva Intifada," and many others. And they can be disturbing, but they should be allowed. In the classroom, I differ a little bit with what Nazir said, because there you have a power imbalance between the professor and the student. And I, for example, devote a lot of thought into how I present the material to my students. And I go out of my way to try to present a balanced account, no matter what my views are on certain parts of the issues. And constantly say, but this is just the way I see it, and I'm not telling you how to see it. And that, there's not enough of that in the university, Nazir, for pro-Zionist professors or pro-Palestinian professors. And this is making the students very uncomfortable, because sometimes the students need to learn how to feel uncomfortable. There's not enough of that. And sometimes the professors need to realize the power imbalance, where students feel very nervous to say anything, and it can affect the way that they write their assignments. They feel they have to toe a certain line in order to do well in the course. And we know what that's all about. So, yeah, I think a balance needs to be found in that. And that is a very difficult balance. And you can't control what a professor does, and might have 1,000 classes going on the campus at the same time. And we have tremendous freedom to do what we want in our classes. I know there have been many students who have been uncomfortable with what's happening. And
No, this is actually a.
yeah.
I'm sorry. Like, I think this is a bigger discussion, to be honest. Like the limits of the freedom of speech in campus and what can be tolerated and the balance of power. These are all controversial and deep topics, and Nazir have successfully stirred that pot. Uh, I would like to go back into the group, so maybe you can tell me quickly how many people are involved, what activities you have done, what happened sort of in the last couple of months. What did you do? How did it work? And I leave it up to you. You can, any one of you would like to take that. I'm good.
I guess I'll start. We've been leading some discussion groups for the wider community. We have like our executive group of about 8 people, and obviously Professor Schnoor as well. And we organize, we like get pizza and stuff and drinks and everything. And everyone's welcome to come, students, staff, faculty, admin, everybody. And they will separate them into like smaller groups, and then give them some prompts, like some questions that we want them to think about, or that we think might stimulate discussion and get and interest people.
So these
And
are self-identifying pro-Israeli or pro-Palestinian groups.
Some people come with no connection to Israel or Palestine, but they are disturbed by what they're seeing in the news, and they have questions or they want to understand more.
Interesting.
And they're welcome too, right? I've seen lots of people come who don't know that much about the situation and just want to know more. And they've contributed excellent things to these conversations.
How big were the groups?
What was it? I think we had like 35 people or
Yeah,
40 people or
the
something
first
like
one was
that.
quite big. It was like,
The
yeah,
first one was quite big. I was really surprised by that because all of our posters got torn off the walls. So I thought like maybe 8 people would show up or something. And then we had like a room full of people just like dying to talk about this stuff. And
So you have posters saying, "Come discuss Israel Palestine in a dialogue way."
I think the
And
flags weren't appreciated. There were flags on
yeah,
the posters, and they were not. The Israeli flag causes a lot of turmoil in the minds of the Palestinian, and I think that probably the same thing applies. So the Palestinians were just staring off the Israeli flag, and then the Israeli students torn off the Palestinian flag, and there was no flags in the end. There's no poster.
no flags. So in the end, you put posters without the flags.
we used a pizza. We used a piece of pizza, and that got torn off the walls too. But
Oh, that is unacceptable.
we
No
just got rid
pizza.
of
Like,
the
what did
posters.
pizza do wrong? Now you know people have
Maybe
problems.
it wasn't kosher pizza. So.
or halal.
Yeah, it wasn't halal or kosher.
Interesting. Okay, so then there
Yeah,
were like
well,
35 people. That's a big number. That's not a small number.
Yeah, it was a really good group. I think it was successful.
yeah, we divided people into smaller groups. And we've had 2 major meetings so far. In the first session, we had people introduce themselves. What is your connection to Israel Palestine, or why did you want to come to this event today? Just go around in a circle. I think we had 3 circles of about 10 or so people. And it's amazing how people are interested to hear from others, what brings them here. What are you from Palestine, Jordan, Saudi, or, what's your connection? Are you born in Israel? Jewish, Muslim, otherwise. And people are very nervous, as Nazir said. I had one woman say that she was very nauseous walking up the stairs to the room um, out of nervousness. And people are very relieved by the end and empowered, I would say, because they found for the first time a safe space where they could actually talk. And people are going to be interested and respect what they're saying, even if they don't agree. We don't have enough of that on the university campus. So it's a safe space, and it's also a brave space. It takes a lot of courage to come. And then once you've been through it, the comfort level increases, and we're just building from there.
You said something very interesting about fear and nauseousness. So Nazir, early when we started giving the introductions, you mentioned the fear of being seen as somebody who's compromising what you believe if you engage in dialogue. I I think I fully understand. My name is Ahmed. I come from the Middle East, very pro-Palestinian here, and I had the same feeling 20 years ago, 23 years ago, during different events, equally tragic. You two were very young then. Probably Randy would remember that. Dr. Schnoor would remember that. The Second Intifada was not an easy time. Tell us more about what would be the fears you have in your mind going in a discussion. All what is being asked of you is to have a discussion.
So I did have a fear, and I still do, and so there's a fear that people think I have, and there's a fear that I actually have. And when I went into the group, I was asked. So I wasn't an executive. Our first meeting, I was just a curious student who was very anxious about it. And I was asked multiple times if I felt like scared about talking about this, if I felt scared that I would be prosecuted for it, if that I'll be doxxed, things like that. And that wasn't exactly the fear that I had. I know people who've been doxxed by parliament members. I imagine. I just want to put it out there. I know a person who was doxxed by a parliament member on Twitter, put her information, and this person I went to school with, she's a teacher in Ontario, put her information and so that people can get her fired because she read a poem about Palestine in her classroom, said where she lives. MP, this is a parliament member. So these things happen, but I that wasn't my fear. I'm pretty confident in the fact that I'm not speaking erratically. I'm approaching this from a humanitarian level, and I know that I'm engaging with people who see it this way as well. So that wasn't exactly my fear, but my fear was that I would have to give something up. I would have to give a part of the cause up in order to have a conversation. This is what I told my professor who told me to come, because I felt like at the time that if I were to speak with an Israeli, for us to be civil, I would have to accept some things that I don't want to accept. I would have to accept that the Palestinian cause is less tragic than it is, for example. I would have to accept that, they're not, for example, oppressed people, which I think they are. I would have to give parts of the cause up. I would be betraying the cause somehow. And I didn't feel this way. When Dr. Schnoor asked me to join as an executive later, my main concern was I don't want to identify with anyone else's opinion. I want to have my own, and I want to make sure that my own opinion is there. And my opinion that can be changed by anybody, of course. My opinions have to be flexible, but I want my opinion to not be imposed on anyone or being imposed on. And I was sure that wasn't going to happen. That didn't happen, and which is why this is working so well. Yeah, but no, it was scary. It for sure it was. Like look, my first time I sat down, we were split into groups. My group had 15 people. It was 2 neutral faculty, myself, and 11 right-wing Israelis or Zionists or Jews. It was it happened to be that the other groups were very civil. My group had right-wing Israelis in it, so I was very anxious. The things that were being said were as extreme as you would expect, but it ended up being very fine. I think I acknowledged a lot of. There's a dynamic that needs to be navigated. I understood the dynamic. We managed to have a very fruitful conversation, and it ended up being very well, very, very good. I'm not gonna lie to you. I stayed because I felt like I have to. If I leave, the 11 right-wing Zionists are gonna be speaking amongst each other, and there's nobody speaking for the Palestinians. So that's why I stayed. It was a selfish reason, but then I ended up staying for 5 hours. We ended up speaking for 5 hours, and
So you kind of stayed to hold the ground. You said like I'm gonna put the stakes
that's
here.
exactly
I'm not leaving. All right.
Look,
So let me ask you a question.
yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. 5 hours. That's a good sign. That means something was happening there. What do you think you personally changed the most, or learned, or surprised you? What is the thing that after those 5 hours you come up with like, I didn't think of that before about those 11 Zionist guys?
So much, and also please stop me if I speak too much, because I learned a
No,
lot from that meeting. First thing, look, first of all, I'm just gonna turn on my light because it's gonna get
it's okay.
dark
It's
in a
okay.
second. Yeah. First thing is, look, I there's this movie that I watched when I was younger, and it's a children's movie, and there was a saying in it that stuck with me my entire life, and I don't know if the movie made up the saying or someone else said it. I have no idea, but it's, if you understand your enemy, you love them, and that stuck with me because we all share a humanity, and we all do things for a reason. We hate for a reason, and we love for a reason. We attack for a reason, and we defend for a reason. There's always a reason of why things happen, and if the reason is really purely understood, you can see the humanity in the other person. And that doesn't mean that then you abandon the cause and go like, well, kumbaya, we're all humans. But you can navigate this with the other person to reach a place where your humanities are both appreciated. And this is how I hope to live. I don't always do that. I'm in traffic and I get mad and I swear at the other guy, but like, I try to live by this. And this is the perspective that I went with during the meeting. And there are two really important things that I learned. The first thing, and the most important thing, is I think the Palestinian cause needs Jewish people. I think these people that are being oppressed, you need a Jewish person on your side. And the other, even more important thing is, I think that if we boil it down to its very core elements, and if we look back for hundreds of years back and we analyze all of the oppression that the two groups have been through, I think there's a lot of symmetries between the two ethnic groups. And forget the Israeli administration. I'm talking about the Jewish person. There's a lot of symmetries there. I truly think that if the conversation is fully had and it's fully exhausted, I think that I have the belief that the Jewish person would also want the Palestinian person to be free and to have autonomy. Same way where Jewish people didn't have a home and they wanted autonomy for themselves and self-determination. So I started seeing these symmetries. So I think this is a very valuable avenue for any pro-Palestinian person to go down on, because we need to be together on this. I think I hold up, and this might be wrong. This might be, Dr. Schnoor might disagree with me. I think that the Israeli administration is an enemy of the Jewish people and the enemy of the Jewish cause. I think it's tarnishing the Jewish religion. And these things, and when I saw that we're understanding each other, and I saw that the right-wing Zionist in front of me was a bit less right-wing Zionist, and I was a bit more understanding of the Jewish person that is stigmatized in the Arab countries, I was like, okay, lovely. I come back the second time, we speak about so many controversial things, and I wasn't careful, and I kept going deeper and deeper, and they kept going deeper and deeper, and it kept getting more and more fruitful. So yeah, it's honestly, I think we need each other here. I truly do think so, and that's an important thing that I learned. That's why I decided to be an executive with this. I think it's good for the cause.
Okay. So you didn't feel that because I think one of the things that is really tough is also the feeling of guilt, because we all are surrounded by the images of suffering, and the feeling of guilt has been very high in both communities. I mean, I know my own community, and I talk to my Jewish friends, and I hear from them about their community as well. Everybody feels guilty and associating with the suffering. So I'll switch to Lizzie now and ask you about what happened that night for you.
Oh, that meeting.
Yeah.
I was really pleasantly surprised. I I consider myself to not be a Zionist, and I've had some, I guess, negative reactions to that from other Jewish people in the past. But coming to the meeting was really nice to see that I was being respected, my Jewishness was being respected, my opinions were being heard. I was able to expose people to ideas that they might not otherwise be exposed to. And the same was happening for me, right? I was hearing things about Zionism from different people that were totally different than what I knew prior to this. And it turns out that like kind of everybody has their own interpretations of things, and it might be completely different than you assume it to be. And that changes your perspective of everyone around you, right? So I felt more connected to, to everyone in the room. I made some great friends, and I think it was a really wonderful experience.
So hold on. Let me get that a little bit, because you came to the conversation as a pro-Israeli and a pro-Jewish person, I would say, or a Jewish person who
I don't consider
feels.
myself to be pro-Israeli.
Okay, so you consider yourself just a Jewish person in the
I'm just
university,
Jewish.
but you feel the pressure on you as a Jewish person, like you felt this was uncomfortable. But
Yeah, I think that there's a strong association between Jews and Israel, and I think that some of the discomfort is that I wish people would separate that. That there's a difference between a nation state and my Jewishness.
but you went into a group of people who totally associate the nation state with the Jewishness,
A lot of people, yeah.
and other group that is on the other side. So like Like at least Nazir has 11 Zionists. You have everyone against you, or at least maybe you're in the same position, but they're coming from both directions now.
Yeah. I felt I felt very strongly pro-Palestinian. I still feel very strongly pro-Palestinian, and I kind of went in there expecting to not be understood by either side, I guess. Right? I hadn't had a lot of opportunities to talk to actual Palestinian people. I just had talked online to people, and I'd read about it, and I'd seen horrible things, but I hadn't gotten to talk to real people about their actual feelings and their actual experiences. And so that was really good. And I learned a lot about both sides. And I still kind of feel in between.
So maybe we are here not representing the full spectrum. Like maybe here we're representing Nazir pro-Palestinian views, who, like a typical pro-Palestinian Arab, would be very suspect of Zionism and Zionists. I mean, and I understand that mentality very well. And you, as in the middle, who think, I am Jewish, I sympathize with the Palestinians, I am not Zionist, and then nobody likes you, so you're alone. This is you.
Yeah.
We're missing the representation from maybe the true Zionists in the group. But if I'm gonna ask you, since I assume you are closer to them than me, at least, what do you think a student who associates his Jewishness with Israel, who believes in Zionism, what do you think they have learned at the end of that conversation, or the thing that they came up with? I was like, I did not think of that before.
So what I'm hearing from people who describe themselves as Zionist is that their feelings about Zionism are different than anti-Zionism seems to perceive it to be, and I think that they too are hurt by what's happening to Palestinian people, and I think that they want that to be seen too. But I feel like maybe some of them are afraid that if they talk about that it will take away from their own pain and their own suffering, and so they, you know, dig deeper into their corner. But when we come to these groups, I see them coming out of that a little bit and being able to say, like, yes, I feel connected to Israel. Yes, I feel like my people have a space there. But no, I don't think it should come at your expense. And no, I don't think it should, be violent. Um, and we can kind of work from there.
So, Dr. Schnoor, I guess that's the crux of the matter. Is like, how surprising is it for us to look at two different communities that did not talk before? It seems like, not honestly.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing here is it's probably more than two communities, but many perspectives that we bring. And this is a Israel-Palestine student dialogue group, and you can come at it from any place, and it's not just you're either A or B. What Lizzie describes as a non-Zionist Jew is a group of Jews who have often not felt accepted in the Jewish community, and I think that's problematic. And this, among other things, this space has given a place for that voice to be heard, and there can be any number of other nuances of voices that come up. So to me, it's not a pro-Israeli, pro-Palestinian divide, but for me, it's pro-empathy, pro-listening, pro-justice, and it's about softening views a little bit. Well, campuses are good at hardening views by yelling in the hallways and making other people uncomfortable. and then claiming there's too much anti-Semitism in the universities and complaining to the administration and etc. But when you can, when you have the courage or the inclination to actually talk to someone who you would never normally speak to, uh, Nazir described as softening. He softened his views, and these, what he describes as these 11 right wing Zionists, some of them probably softened their views too. Now, some of them never came back for the second meeting, Nazir, and I think they may have been hardened or at least stayed the same, and it's not for them. And this space isn't for everyone.
Professor, conversation is hard. Like I see that conversation is hard, and I do think, and one of our executives is Palestinian, and
Two of them are.
two of them are, yeah, but one of them is very what's it called? It's the yeah, like both of them are. One of them is very affected by the conversation. It's impacting him deeply. He's not. It's not boding that well. And I was he asked me a question, and this is something I touched upon on the second meeting, because I think it's important for other Israelis to know. He asked me, how do you do this? Because he heard me talk for 5 hours, and he was like, how didn't you just get up and leave? Because I heard a lot of harsh things. I did, like, because we're speaking frankly, and while also the other Israelis heard harsh things, I did too. It's like, how can you not take it? And my answer was very simple: is that because I'm not Palestinian? Because although this is very painful to me, what I realize is that, okay, that I look, out of all of my Palestinian friends, I can honestly say 80% of them lost direct family members, whether it's aunts, what's it called, mothers, fathers, grandparents, sisters, children, So these guys have a very, it's personal, while and still personal for the Israelis. It's familial. It's they've lost people. So these guys, it's very hard for them to have these conversations. So, and this is important to understand, because we need to foster an environment where these guys can slowly be able to talk about these things. And until that happens, I feel like I have a responsibility to speak for the Palestinians who I don't think are able to speak. And I think the same thing probably applies also for the Israelis who represent their colleagues and their not colleagues, their fellow Israelis and Jewish people who also don't have the strength and capacity to speak because they're very hurt. I think this is also a very important aspect of our group. It's we need to keep expanding this and speaking for each other until the person can speak for themselves. I think this is very important.
I'll just point out that there are several Israeli members of our group and people who've been to our discussion groups who have lost family on October 7th as well, friends, and have had direct impacts from that as well. I think it's hard for a lot of people to have this conversation, but I understand that, like, it's an ongoing trauma.
Thing is,
right?
the problem is, Lizzie, is that with and you guys asked me about this in the group, is that we what's it called, the Palestinian, okay, so we all have echo chambers, right? All of us, we have echo chambers that and we keep hearing the same opinion over and over again from our own people, and this is a problem. That's why you diversify your dialogue, right? But the problem is the Palestinians echo chamber has a lot of holes in it because of the fact that they're not localized people. They feel oppressed, and these guys are born outside of their country. They're born into chaos. It's like you're being thrown into chaos where they're raised knowing that they don't have a home, that their family have been dying for 60 years, and they're gonna continue dying for the 100 years next, and they're dying right now. And it's an identity crisis. They're being raised around Americans and around British people, around Europeans and other Middle Eastern, but not their own people. Palestinians are not surrounded by Palestinians. So because of the fact that they feel oppressed, they end up trying to understand what's happening, and there's a cause to be fought here. To fight the cause, you make poetry and you make music, and you speak through that, and then you make literature, and you philosophize, and you think, and you engage in more literature about this, right? While what I understood from my conversations with not all but many of our Jewish colleagues is that they never heard about this. You know, they never had to consume the literature. They never had, because they don't feel oppressed per se. You know, they've been impacted by this, and I'm not taking that away. But they haven't been oppressed by this. You know, it's they're surrounded by their Jewish, and the Jewish community is very close knit. So this is a big echo chamber, and I think honestly, I don't condemn them for this. No one should. This is not a single person's fault. It's not their fault that in their household they don't discuss the Palestinian struggle and why the Palestinians feel the way they are. You know, this is not the Jewish person's fault. But now I do feel like I have a responsibility to accept this with my open arms and show them this other world while they're also showing me their own world. You know, and
I just wanted to tell you something, Nazir. Like as I'm listening to you, and I'm trying not to throw my opinions here. As I'm listening to you, uh, I'm going to listen to the recording. I put a marker on it. I think that that part of the recording, that those statements you made about being born into chaos and the knowledge of the death and destruction to your grandparents and to the generations behind you that is following you until now, and surrounded by people who are always not like you and feeling like a minority everywhere you are, except for the place which is not really happening. It is very eerily
close to the Jewish
similar.
experience,
If
which is
you
what I'm talking
replace
about, the symmetry.
Palestinian with Jewish, I was like, holy cow, this is the
Absolutely, I
same thing.
completely agree. I completely agree. This is the symmetry I was talking about. This is why I do think that at the essence, really deep essence, you have to dig for like miles, but at the essence of the Palestinian cause is something that's very similar to the Jewish cause, and it's about self-determination. And I do think that's a shared experience, and it should be.
So I want to take that out back from the Palestinian-Israeli issue. We're not going to settle that one here, and I think we sort of understand where you guys stand. Back into the Canadian context and the university. What's next? What do you hope, Lizzie, will happen? What do you think will come out of this?
I'm hoping that people will see that it's safe to come out of their echo chambers, that that there's a difference between feeling unsafe emotionally and being unsafe, because I think a lot of what's happening when people are claiming anti-Semitism and feeling, you know, that they're being oppressed is they're anticipating these things, and they're not really hearing. They're not willing to be uncomfortable to hear the other message, right? So I'm hoping that people will come out of that a little bit and go like, maybe I'm wrong about the meaning of intifada, right? Like, tell me what it means to you, and then I'll decide if it's something anti-Semitic or if it means I'm unsafe. Because I think people are making a lot of assumptions, and everybody's feeling unsafe, but there's not really that much danger, right? Like we see this in our group. Everybody came in nervous and had a good experience. There wasn't actually that much danger. So I wish everybody would take a step outside of their comfort zone.
Okay. How about you, Nazir? Where do you
Uh,
think this can go after? What do you hope will happen?
I do look. It's these honest conversations require a bit of controversy. I do think so. I think these things need to be discussed from both sides, and honestly, I think we're doing quite well, and I think so far we haven't been bothered by anyone complaining about that we're breaching political correctness rules. But so what I do hope so is that we just are able to keep speaking honestly. Like I think there's a lot of value in that. We're seeing value every day. But as soon as we start wanting to cater for what the other wants to hear, then the conversation stops. As soon as we all agree with each other, the conversation is going to stop. And then we're at a stalemate and we stop. And I don't think that's going to happen. So that's why I'm really glad the administration, for example, hasn't intervened. Because if you try to keep things in order, the conversation is going to stop. And yeah, and that's
I would describe that as a dialogue. Back to Dr. Schnoor. Why haven't then the administration intervened? That's crazy. How can they let you do that?
Oh, I don't know why the administration would intervene. I was a bit puzzled by that. Seems to be we're only doing positive things. Nazir, what do you mean by that?
Professor.
And then I'll go on.
Professor,
No, I'm joking. I'm joking with you, Nazir. Please don't get dragged into this. No, I'm seriously asking. What has been your impression of the reception of this dialogue, and you think the administration, or how do you feel that the administration responded to that?
Um, there has been so much support at York University for this among my colleagues, different departments, and the students, and in particular the administration. As you said, Ahmed, we've had a lot of tension over the years, a lot of flashpoints since October 7th, and we're doing a great service to York University, and they appreciate it because we're creating an alternative space, which is which is really the healthy way to handle this. It's not easy, and but there's a great appetite for this. And with these outstanding students, we have created something very special at York. You want to talk about epicenter? We are the epicenter of civil dialogue on Israel Palestine in Canada. And I can't tell you, Ahmed, how many universities have contacted me, senior administration or professors, uh, Queens, at Western, at TMU, at UBC, University of Sydney in Australia. I've had so many conversations and Zoom calls. Um, we're not the first people to ever create dialogue. This is a long-standing tradition of peace building, um, and they're doing it at the University of Texas, one of their campuses. But those are the only two places I know of in North America right now that have successful dialogue. So um, I'm super proud of what we're doing.
Yeah, I don't
Uh,
want this to come off as me not being proud, because I really am, and I do agree with everything you said. I have a question. Like my only concern, it's not a concern. It's an inference that might be wrong. Is that I just wonder if this was spearheaded by very Palestinian identifying individuals, if the administration would have been as supportive. This is something that that sort of it. On one hand, I'm grateful that this isn't happening, and it doesn't matter how the dialogue starts and who starts it, as long as it started. So it's not that much of a concern. It just I do think that there's more stigma about Palestinians speaking, because of the fact that a lot of the cause is shrouded with an anti-Semitic light. It's being described as anti-Semitic. So if the people spearheading it are people who identify as pro-Palestinian, the immediate reaction would be that, well, this is probably an anti-Semitic dialogue. We probably need to veer away from this so that we're not associated as much. This is my fear, is that I don't think we're being anti-Semitic, and I think that these things need to be critically looked upon and skepticized.
Well, we're definitely not being anti-Semitic.
so,
You
but
raise a good point.
yeah,
Yeah, go
it's
ahead.
possible. It's possible. I mean, you also, I think I'm older than all of you people here on that call,
Doesn't show.
and I am probably very sympathetic to the administration. Like I'm afraid to say that publicly because I have friends who would be very angry. The older you get, the more understanding you are of the nature of chaos and the bad consequences of events, and the more the more sympathetic to the human condition you become. I was much younger
That's
one day, and I
that's
was way more radical, right? So I understand why would the university probably, if I was in administration, I would probably feel more comfortable with somebody running this who is Jewish, because I don't know them. I'm just saying my view. because I'm interested in allowing my pro-Palestinian students to express their opinions and pain and anger and frustration. This is all allowed. But I'm also interested in protecting the psyche and the psychological safety of Jewish students. It as a bad thing. I see it just as a practical approach. And as I get older, I start to salute practical people because they
You know
solve
what?
problems.
I agree. But my counterpoint is that I do agree with everything you said, but I think practicality is expected and needed, but then also a pushback is expected and needed until you
Of
reach an
course,
optimal mindset. So
always,
I think we're
always.
both, the administration and us are playing a role here where I you know what, I do agree that they want to keep us safe. 100%. I think they want to keep us safe. I think maybe we are sometimes too harsh, but I do think that that pushback probably is needed for them to just do it better, because
I
we never get it right the first time.
fully understand. I know very well um, certain certain events that can be seen as human rights events um, that attacks human rights violations that happen in countries that are run by what they claim to be Sharia law, like say Afghanistan or Saudi Arabia 20 years. And while I know that most Muslims in Canada would agree that these are violations of human rights and these are bad things and should not happen. Sorry, that was not me.
Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. No problem. Um, no problem. And then, uh, and but then I know that these events will be a dog whistle for everyone who do not like Muslims. And I know if there was a Muslim student in campus wearing hijab, she will feel vulnerable and she will be very uncomfortable and she would be really scared. On the symmetry that you guys brought earlier, um, the Muslim community and the Jewish community in Canada are very similar in the fact that I honestly believe there are people who just once they know you are Jewish or Muslim, they have a view of you. Once they know your name, I have assumptions on what you drink, what you eat, and it's these things that are really worrisome in Canada. And this is why I wanted to start this podcast because before we end, I wanted to go and ask everyone if you want to say something to the Jewish dads, Lizzie, who are really concerned for the safety of their kids in university. And it's a true concern. Like I know. It doesn't matter if it's real or not. The concern is real. It doesn't matter if the danger is I'm worried. It's my daughter or my son, and I'm really worried about them. What do you want to say to them that you wish they knew, you think will make them feel maybe better?
Um, so like my mom is kind of like this right now. She worries about my name being out there, for example. I think I want to tell people that not listening is not keeping us safe. Othering the other side is not keeping us safe. None of that is going to keep us safe. Divide does not keep us safe.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you. And Nazir, what do you tell my friends, the Arab and Palestinian parents who are really unhappy about how unfair they think their kids are being treated in school?
See, my mom didn't want me to do this. My mom was very scared.
Oh,
But
nice.
yeah, she was like, no,
All of our
yeah.
mothers are
She
very
was like,
uncomfortable.
no, you should stand up for what you believe in, but not now. Do it when you're 40. I was like, yeah, mama, for sure. Um, Look, I would say that we're fine. I think we need to be. They need to let us speak. I think these trials and tribulations that students go through, and the Jewish community goes through, and the Muslim community goes through, I think it's important. I think it teaches us a lot. I think we're seeing this every day where I know it's a struggle, I know it's bad, I know, but we need to empower our children to speak. We need to empower our children to engage in these, to learn more. Because look, we don't read, we don't learn. We just live in our little bubble. And I think sometimes parents, to protect their children, encourage that, not directly, but we do encourage it subconsciously. And I think this is what we need to be encouraging, to go out there, to read, to speak to Nazir and Lizzie and Dr. Schnoor and the other Nazirs and Schnoors and Lizzies of the world, and have these conversations, because we need to learn. And when we learn, we become more human, we become more connected, and then hopefully we help our people back home through that.
Not just Lizzie and Dr. Schnoor, but also your newly acquired 11 Zionist friends. I'm
Yeah,
hoping.
of course, love those guys.
We should talk to them one day. Maybe we should host them. Like, I think I need to see these guys. I'm really curious. I'm so glad that I talked to you guys.
You need to come to one of our events. You really need to.
I
Mhm.
definitely
Yeah, like not
will.
even the panels. I even mean the discussion groups. I think those, I like those a lot. It's more, the conversation flows really well. You'd be
Well,
intrigued. It's interesting.
I am glad. I am really glad. I am hopeful. Probably I'm glad to see you, Nazir. I'm glad to see you, Lizzie. Um, Dr. Schnoor, I can't thank you enough for being brave to do that. And this is what is going to take us forward. And I'm really, really delighted. And I hope everyone who listens to this will find this hopeful. And you guys are our leaders, to be honest. You're the people who are going to lead us forward, because the angry guys can take us forward. They're just going to pull us apart and take us back. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everybody.
No, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm very appreciative of this.